Hey guys, so let's continue on this video that is making me lose so many brain cells.
We were repeatedly promised by Biden, Fauci, and many others that Americans who got vaccinated would not get the coronavirus.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Now, as we see many vaccinated people continuing to get COVID, we know for a fact that this was not true.
Notice how she said now, because guess what? Variants have risen and vaccines are less effective at preventing you from getting these variants. Our vaccine was made for the original virus strain. Well, actually not the original, but close enough. When Delta was a thing, it was able to more effectively evade vaccine-induced immunity better, and same with Omicron. There's no way scientists would be able to predict the future and create a vaccine specific for these new strains before they become mainstream. So it's very dishonest for you to undermine the effectiveness of the vaccine shortly before Omicron took over the world. If you think you can do better, then be my guest. Plus, vaccines are never meant to be 100% effective no matter which vaccine we're talking about. With Pfizer and Moderna having about a 95% efficacy rate initially, that was better than some of our best vaccines in the past. But again, it's never going to be 100%, so you'll definitely find breakthrough infections around the country still. But the point is to get enough people vaccinated so the virus has a harder time spreading around and eventually it will subdue or die out.
Vaccinated Americans can still get coronavirus, though their symptoms are usually less severe and they are less likely to die from the virus.
Oh, would you look at that? The vaccine is effective after all. Honestly, the main point of a vaccine was never to make it so you don't develop symptoms or don't get infected. That's often difficult to do. The main point is actually to reduce hospitalizations in order to alleviate hospital pressures and decrease death. Thanks for at least admitting to that fact, although your audience would probably hate it.
As Fauci said in January, Omicron, with its extraordinary unprecedented degree of efficiency of transmissibility, will ultimately find just about everyone.
Sure, you're more likely than not to get infected, but when you are infected, would you rather just have a mild cough and sit at home for a few days, or would you rather go to the hospital due to difficulty breathing?
American women expressed concerns early on about how vaccines would affect their fertility, complaining on social media that their menstrual cycle had changed since getting the vaccine. Media and health officials repeatedly assured the public that there was no evidence to suggest COVID vaccines negatively affect fertility.
Who would I believe? A few people claiming so on the internet or actual scientific studies that looked at the numbers? This is such a stupid idea that keeps being brought up over and over again. I don't know how many times I saw people claim, oh my god, the vaccine sterilizes me. The vaccine does not sterilize you. The vaccine does not affect your baby when you're pregnant. In fact, COVID itself will do a lot more damage to your reproductive system, in addition to many other organs including your lungs and kidneys. Why risk all this damage when you can just get a shot in the span of 5 minutes? It just makes no sense to me why people who are able to get vaccinated don't get vaccinated. If you were obese, for example, and you could just flip a switch and not be obese, why wouldn't you do it? That's the power of vaccinations, and it just baffles my mind that people still refuse to get it.
Until January 2022, when a new study found that women had an average menstrual cycle length of about 1 day longer than usual after getting vaccinated.
Alright, let's read this paper. Not the secondary article, mind you. We gotta get to the source of this. Let's just take a look at the abstract for now. We included 3,959 individuals, vaccinated 2,403, unvaccinated 1,556. Most of the vaccinated cohort received the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, 55%, Moderna 35%, J&J 7%. Overall, COVID-19 vaccine was associated with a less than 1 day change in cycle length for both vaccine dose cycles compared with the pre-vaccine cycles. First dose 0.71 day increase, 98.75%. Confidence interval 0.47 to 0.94. Second dose 0.91, 98.75%. Confidence interval 0.63 to 1.19. Unvaccinated individuals saw no significant change compared with 3 baseline cycles. Blah blah blah. In adjusted models, the difference in change in cycle length between the vaccinated and unvaccinated cohorts was less than 1 day for both doses. Changes in menses length was not associated with vaccination. So it turns out this paper suggests that there is indeed a small increase, about 0.7 to 0.9 days in the average menstrual cycle of vaccinated women. That being said, 0.7 to 0.9 is not a lot, and the menstrual cycle of women change all the time depending on multiple factors, even something as basic as stress. This is a difficult one to measure because it's difficult to control for all these factors, even if we had a high confidence level. But I believe the authors are sometimes the best at interpreting their own papers, so let's see what they have to say in their publication. The change in cycle length was less than 1 day, which is below the reportable difference in the menstrual cycle tracking application and is not clinically significant. And that's true. Varying cycles happen all the time, and usually the borderline is somewhere around 7 to 8 days to be normal. A less than a day difference is nothing to be concerned about and most definitely is not clinically significant. The study continues to cite its own limitations as well, such as not being applicable to the average woman living in the United States. The one I want to point out the most is number 3 here at the bottom. The authors took measurements of multiple cycles after vaccination and found that people who were vaccinated returned to normal cycle lengths relatively quickly, suggesting that the delays, even if they do exist, are only temporary. The authors support this further by stating individuals receiving 2 COVID-19 vaccine doses in a single cycle do appear to experience a longer but temporary cycle length change. So a lot to take away here. First of all, I can't completely trust the study's findings due to the difficulty to control for all these factors involved in menstrual timing. Second of all, even if there was a conclusive difference, it's not clinically significant to the woman's health due to it being a less than a day increase. Third of all, even if it is significant, it's only temporary as the woman's cycles return to normal relatively quickly. So nice try.
Health officials say the change is small and temporary, noting that plenty of vaccinated women have gotten pregnant. But women have criticized media dismissals of their concerns, saying they deserve real answers from medical professionals about how the vaccine affects their fertility.
But there are answers. Scientists publish papers all the time, which you can easily access from your computer or even your smartphone. There are also plenty of other resources that even compile COVID information for easy digestion, which is really how I get all my COVID updates. In the age of the internet, everything is super transparent, and that includes all the papers and studies published by scientists and doctors. This is just you complaining about not receiving real scientific answers when they're right in front of your face. The article you cited, in fact, has a link that leads you directly to the original source paper, which is how I myself found it to begin with. It's not that scientists aren't giving you answers, it's you that is turning away and pretending you're not getting answers. This is ridiculous on so many levels.
We were promised that vaccinations would end COVID and that Americans would no longer have to mask after they got the vaccine. But the CDC changed its mask guidance when it found in July 2021 that vaccinated people could still get the COVID Delta variant. And across the country, leftist politicians like DC Mayor Muriel Bowser continue to mandate masks for indoor businesses and events.
This is literally just you complaining about wearing a mask. Vaccines definitely play a huge part in ending a pandemic. If we were magically able to get everyone vaccinated, then the pandemic would most likely end, or at least scale down to something less global. But when we have idiots that refuse to vaccinate, or when rich countries hog all the vaccines, we're going to get more infections, which leads to more variants, which leads to starting the process all over again. We can either buckle down and beat this virus once and for all, or we can keep dancing with it. Which do you prefer?
Fauci has repeatedly denied that agencies under his direction engaged in gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Media called pushback on this claim from people like Senator Rand Paul misinformation. But a high-ranking National Institutes of Health officer admitted in an October letter that the Wuhan Institute of Virology had failed to immediately notify that it had engaged in what sure looks a lot like gain-of-function research, creating a lab-generated chimeric coronavirus between June 2018 and May 2019 that tested more deadly on mice with humanized cells than the natural virus it was made from.
This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
So
let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah.
Wait, didn't we talk about this in part 1? I'm forgetting what was in a video I made 2 weeks ago. Jeez. I think I went pretty in-depth in my previous video, and I assume you all have watched it, right? Haha, of course you have. Why do we even debate gain of function when we can literally see it in the DNA? This is literally not a debate. The evidence is right there. And I don't know what that newsletter you're referring to is, but how can something, quote, look like gain of function research? What does that even mean?
Biden and Fauci have repeatedly blamed the unvaccinated for propagating outbreaks of the coronavirus Delta and Omicron variants. As recently as January 13th, Biden said that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, but the president and health officials who continue to cite breakthrough cases are either forgetting or ignoring the many vaccinated Americans who have contracted COVID as of late.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And I mean by this, right now, both vaccinated and unvaccinated people are testing positive.
We now know that we have been lied to by the very people that claim to be protecting us, and we have been lied to repeatedly.
Pandemic of the unvaccinated was actually quite an accurate saying, and it was a rhetoric used to encourage people to get vaccinated. In hospitals, you see time and time again, the people who are the most severely affected by COVID are those who are unvaccinated. Sure, we can have breakthrough infections, but again, vaccines aren't meant to protect you from getting infected or experiencing symptoms 100% of the time. That technology does not exist for any disease. So you're being very dishonest right now. That being said, we also should expand the scope to not only our own country, but also others too, because unvaccinated people in poorer countries are also contributing to the propagation of the pandemic, so it's important to distribute resources to them too. Anyway, thank you all for watching. That was 10 lies from scientists or politicians, but didn't actually turn out to be lies. Thank you to Fireshard, Alan Morton, Ms. Fixit, and our newest top tier patron, Edward Martin, for their contributions on Patreon, and I will see you next week.